now the ensuing capital, or chaos at least in Niger's capital in the last few hours, where the country's military has declared its support for guards who've carried out a coup. Now, it comes after men appeared on state television yesterday and announced that the president, Mohamed Bazoum, had been removed. Hundreds of supporters of the coup looted the offices of the ruling party before setting buildings on fire.
Cars and buildings were set on fire in Niger's capital, Niamey, on Thursday, after hundreds of supporters of a coup gathered in front of the ruling party headquarters. Young men looted motorbikes, chairs and other supplies from the building. Other demonstrators waved Russian flags and chanted anti-French slogans, echoing a growing wave of resentment towards former colonial power France and its influence in the Sahel region. The demonstrations came as Niger's army command declared support for the coup carried out the previous day by soldiers of the Presidential Guard. Army Colonel Amadou Adraman announced on state television that all political party activities have been suspended. A group of soldiers announced in a late-night televised address that they stripped President Mohamed Bazoum of power. Juntas in neighboring Mali and Burkina Faso have grown closer to Russia since they took charge in 2020 and 2022 respectively. They cut ties with traditional Western allies. Niger's role had become increasingly important for Western powers, helping fight a violent insurgency in the region. In a social media posting on Thursday morning, Bazoum vowed to protect hard-won democratic gains. In separate comments on Thursday, the head of African Union, Azali Assoumani, condemned the coup and called for Bazoum's release.
For more on this, we're joined by Unisa's Politics Department's Dr. Edwin Yingi. Dr. Yingi, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. How did Niger get to this point?
Good evening, Tempekula. Good evening to the viewers, and thank you for having me. Niger came to this point for various reasons. To begin with, this is Niger's fifth successful coup since its independence from France in 1960. And now, what we know from what the coup plotters have said is that they have intervened to stop what they have described as a deteriorating security situation in the country, and what they have also described as mismanagement, social and economic mismanagement. But the situation unfolding in Niger should be understood in the context of the region. The context of the region should give us a clue of what is happening in Niger. Mm-hmm. One of the context in Niger is that there are coups which happened in its neighboring Mali and its neighboring Burkina Faso. 4 military takeovers since 2020, and that gives us a context and how those two countries have tried to sever ties with their former colonial power, France. So that gives us the context of what is happening in Niger currently.
Can a coup, as has happened now in Niger in the last 24 hours or so, can it be a true reflection of the will and the wishes of the people when you consider complaints about the deteriorating economic situation, a deteriorating security situation, and the fact that there were people who indeed poured out onto the streets shortly after the announcement that Bazoum had been ousted?
To a given extent, would say this might be one of the popular coups, like some of the coups we have seen in those parts of Africa. Because Niger, if you look at the economic situation of Niger, Niger is ranked at the bottom of the UN Human Development Index. Niger is a weak state. Niger is a poor state. notwithstanding the aid Niger is receiving from the West, but Niger continues to be a weak state. And this explains why people seem to have embraced with jubilation the removal of President Mohammed from power by the military. The people think this is done maybe to improve their lot. But to be honest, if other military coups which have happened are something to go by, this is not about the people. This is about power for the military. This is about influence for the military. This is not about the people.
The United States, the French, have military bases, am I right, in the area of Niger. They've condemned what's happened over the last 24 hours. So has Russia. President Bazoum, tweeting today, said this, the hard-won achievements will be safeguarded and that all Nigerians who love democracy and freedom will see to it. Is he speaking from a place where he actually has enough support to take back control from the army, or is this it for him? Is it over?
From where I stand, I think it's over. It's over for him. Why am I saying so? Despite that, the United States has condemned the coup, the European Union also has condemned the coup, and the ECOWAS has condemned the coup. But in the case of ECOWAS, we are talking of a region or a regional body which is discredited. ECOWAS failed to deal with the coup in Mali. It failed to deal with the coup in Burkina Faso. And the current chair of ECOWAS, the Nigerian president, Bola Tinubu, is facing a lot of pressure in his own country as far as his election is concerned. So the issuance of statements that President Mohammed is defiant, of course he's issuing those statements, but I don't see him surviving. I don't see him surviving this coup, because one of the reasons why he will not survive is I don't see him getting support from a military government in Mali. I don't see him getting support from a military government in Burkina Faso. So I think it is over for him, as far as I'm concerned.
And just on the issue of Mali and Burkina Faso and what's happened in Niger in the last day and a half, it is similar in a way, in the sense that there's a growing anti-French sentiment. Even in Niger, we're getting reports that flags were seen with slogans such as "Down with France." The French has, over the years, deployed its military through the region. They currently are in the process, are they not, of pulling out their forces out of Mali, basically told to go. Contextualize the rise in the rejection of a French presence in countries that are in fact former colonies.
I see France losing favor with its former colonies. And one of the reasons is the history of France and how France is exploiting your former colonies. And if you look in the case of Mali and Burkina Faso, one of those countries has actually discontinued the use of French as their language. They've also removed French forces or French military bases in their countries. So the growing discontent or the growing hate of France in its former colonies, it all has to do with how France deals with your former colonies, and we all know how France exploits your former colonies. So the growing discontent of French presence in Niger is actually a negative on the part of the current president, because there are still French forces in Niger. We have American bases in Niger, and Niger is regarded by the West as the beacon of hope in the Sahel region as far as the fight against terrorism is concerned. But it is the dealing of France with her former colonies. That is a major undoing on the part of President Mohammed.
Dr. Edwin Yingi, postdoctoral fellow in the politics department at the University of South Africa. Thank you so much for your time tonight, sir.